And we are live. So thanks for holding on with us, everybody. Sorry for the short delay, but we guarantee we're going to show you some really cool stuff about the world of vibe coding today, especially for professional services firms. And we're going to get right into intros. So I'm Sean McLean. I'm the founder of Low High Advisors. I'm a fractional CIO. And we do everything from AI strategy to AI implementation through a lot of awesome alliances and partners, like some of the folks on this call. I'm going to kick it over to Preston for your intro, and then we'll finish up with Tam.
Hey, I'm Preston. I'm a CPA and I run Rocketbooks Dev, which is a consulting agency that helps accounting firms and financial service companies with automation and AI and anything tech stack related.
Well,
Tam?
thanks all. My name is Tam, former accountant, and I've worked in fintech roles, working with accounting firms for quite some time. And I am now running Donegan AI, which is a AI consulting agency focusing on professional services companies and helping to consult and implement on AI, specifically around sales, marketing, and lead gen flows.
Awesome. And thanks so much for joining with us today. So, I would like to kick us off with some basic foundational pieces of what is vibe coding to each of us. So, Tam, why don't you start? Like, to you, especially since you've been using some of the tools, daily in some regard, how would you define and communicate to somebody who doesn't know what vibe coding is? What is it, and how is it important to you so far?
Well, vibe coding is such an interesting term it's in itself. And it's just, I don't know, it's just, you're vibing, you're coding. You don't need to be a dev. You don't need to understand code in order to create full stack applications. So we're talking about the entire front end, so the user interface, things that you can actually interact with, buttons you can actually click, but also the back end as well. And that's where a lot of non-developers struggle with because you need to understand how databases are structured, how to set that up, how data flows from one place to another. And a tool like Lovable, Bolt.new, Replit, these make it incredibly easy for anyone who does not have a development background to simply prompt the tool, tell it what you want it to do, an application that you want it to build, and it will build everything for you. You just need to go have a little bit of patience and go back and forth with it to make it work the way you want it or have it designed the way you want it. And that's where we are going to be talking about things like having a product requirements document ahead of time or other tips and tricks that might help you get development backgrounds to create the full stack app and so.
Hey Tam, I think we're losing you for a sec. I think your internet might be dropping out. I don't know, Preston, if you want to pick it up and see if her internet can recover.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, like she's saying, I mean, you're going from 0 to 1 pretty much in the span of 2 minutes, which, if you're not someone who has historically been a coder, is not possible until now. And and if you are, I mean, I think it just accelerates the stage that would normally take maybe like a week or two to literally minutes. So, kind of like piggybacking on what she was saying, I think at least for people like me who don't know how to code in the typical sense, I think having going from like an idea to like an MVP, minimum viable product, where you can just test something and see if it actually is like what you're looking for. I mean, you can do that for a $20 a month subscription now instead of, or sometimes even free if they have a free tier, instead of paying thousands of dollars for a developer to build that for you. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it means to me. That's why it's been useful for me at least. And I don't know, Sean, do you have anything you want to add there?
Yeah, and one quick sec. I think we might be not live right now. I'm not sure if LinkedIn Live cut us off because we started too late, but what just so that we can do a quick check and we can wipe this recording. if you guys go to the event on LinkedIn, do you see us live? You should be able to see us live. But from my perspective, it still says starting soon.
I think I see us live. I'm on here and it looks like it's live streaming. So
On LinkedIn?
yeah,
Okay.
I clicked it. So let's see. I
Okay,
mean, yeah,
cool.
it looks
Then it
like it's
might
live.
just, yeah, it might just be my side then. Okay, cool. For whatever, usually it does show the actual full deal. So we'll keep rolling with it and be able to cut that little interlude out of the recording. So yeah, the main aspect of actual vibe coding and just customization that's really alluring to me is that and this is something I've really talked about with a lot of different communities, both in the CPA advisory space as well as legal and construction. It's really to the point that we can start to do a lot of technical things for non-technical people with just good ideas. And that has really blown a lot of my communities and my prospects' minds, even to the standpoint that in the last couple of weeks, I'm doing technically like just text to execution, and you'll see it in a second for actual really well detailed PowerPoint decks or a visual or a dashboard or conversational data or setting up document generation. All of these things in the past would create super frustration for a lot of people that knew they could do something good, but they didn't quite know technically how to interface with the right program, or they had the right program and it was failing. So, using these tools now to be able to code for non-coders gives us the ability to talk through and iterate. Now, you have to have patience. That's one of the key things, and you have to be able to have a learning mentality. But if you do, and you try to work with a lot of these different platforms that will show you, there's going to be a high ceiling of what you can do for both personal and business productivity. And so I think that's like the real moral of the story for me. It's been many decades now of watching people want to do pie in the sky things, and now they actually can, which is really cool. And it really showcases for small business owners in particular that you don't necessarily need to surround yourself with tons of supporting materials and people if you know how to use some of these tools properly. So, any other like thoughts, you guys, on what the foundational piece and the reason for getting into this type of development can really lead to?
I would just say I think if you are a person that has ideas, this is worth learning.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity really is the only limiting factor here as these tools get better and better. It just makes it easier for us to develop. So,
100%. Well, cool. So I'm gonna jump into a quick little demo of some of the platforms that we're lightly referring to so we can actually put names to groups, and then we'll be able to kick over to an actual live demo next so that you'll be able to actually see some of these in action. So right now, I am sharing a real slim deck that I technically did vibe code yesterday. So all of this stuff is really recently refreshed, and that's one of the other cool reasons you can use these non-coding coding tools, because in the background it can make it look really nice. It can make it look very organized. As with anything with AI, you do need to validate the data and make sure that is all properly correct. But it can be super duper efficient, productive to be able to have this. So right now we're starting off with probably the three of us coding platform that we use the most for vibe coding is Lovable. It's probably the most easiest to embrace, as the pros call it. It's very intuitive, has intelligent AI agent workflows, quick prototyping, which we'll get into a little bit more, and also has some advanced security procedures. One thing that you'll notice is it is SOC 2 compliant, but not HIPAA compliant. So if you did have like a biotech startup or something dealing with HIPAA compliance, you're still going to be in a little bit of problem areas, has some attractive pricing as well as the free level is really usable. And they also had a recent in April kind of a 2.0 launch that included more of this AI chat mode to be able to do it. And also, Lovable does have a direct backend integration with Supabase so that you can do some base level technology pieces as well. So I'm going to go to the next one. We're going to roll through these pretty quickly. Bolt. One thing that's really nice about Bolt is that it does have some nice native mobile capabilities. So a lot of people are using that for prototyping mobile apps, as well as very fast and intuitive chat-based interface. So kind of similar to Lovable, but it does focus on the Claude 3.5 model right now. Has some recent pricing updates. But as you'll notice in the security side, it's not SOC 2 compliant yet. So for a personal use platform, I think it's pretty good. But if you were doing stuff for your firm or putting any type of sensitive data in, you'd want to be really careful with Bolt right now. And on the right side of this deck, you'll see all of that information around the security and compliance and the pricing. So Cursor, which you'll see a little bit from Preston later, this is the kind of like the big daddy full coding piece that can do a lot more than Lovable can. So a lot of people actually will start in Lovable and then hit some barriers and then finish it up in Cursor. It's a really nice handoff between those two platforms from a simplicity as well as a full, almost enterprise style coding platform. And as you see, they even offer a flat rate price of $38,400 for enterprise customers. So it's much cheaper than a developer actually can be. And it gives a nice value prop because it has all the security tools as well. So you definitely want to have Cursor and this other one, Windsurf, on your radar. Windsurf, as you see in blue here, was recently acquired for $3 billion from OpenAI. They're still in the process of rolling that fully into the platform. Some of that stuff might even be in the background as OpenAI continues to iterate and release new features. It also was formerly known as Codium. So some people can get a little bit confused because there are some similar platforms that had similar names in the space, and they've all changed. So for example, this one's gone from Codium to Windsurf, and now it's technically part of OpenAI. That will probably see it as a different name with OpenAI's interesting naming conventions. But SOC 2 Type 2 certified, has annual pen testing, has some pretty affordable pricing per month. And I think this is another one with Cursor that every type of firm should have on their radar for full stack style vibe coding because it can really be customized. Another real popular one is Claude Artifacts. Similar to ChatGPT, you can use a lot of this stuff straight in that chat format that's not necessarily doing the coding in another window for you, like a Cursor or like a Windsurf, but this can also give you a nice little copy and paste. And it's getting a lot of wide usage in the coding space. Again, it has all of the compliance checkboxes right now. And it is something that a lot of startups are using, especially if they prefer the Anthropic ecosystem over OpenAI or Microsoft with GitHub Copilot. And sometimes they're using all three, but it's very popular. Another one that I've actually heard some firms prefer because it's rated as extremely fast prototyping and really high quality user experiences, Vercel. So VO by Vercel, very nice. It does have some limits on the database and the ability to actually have back-end capability. Again, when we talk full stack coding, you do want to have real nice integrations on both the front end and the back end. So this one is probably a little bit limited. And again, they don't quite have the full SOC 2 compliance dialed in yet. So Again, I would categorize this one as a personal professional type of platform, not necessarily something that you'd be looking to adopt for your firm. Replit also kind of falls into that category. I know a lot of people who really love Replit because it has this kind of holistic view of doing coding. It has a lot of capabilities. It recently had an update with its version 2. Has also a really cool community and templates, kind of like a little mini GitHub Copilot community. And it's usage based, which for some people is really advantageous. 25 cents per checkpoint, which is kind of like a project style task. So I think it's something that is very on the radar for a lot of people, but again, not quite fully up to speed for like the full firm community. So I think the fact that Windsurf was recently acquired by OpenAI is a major talking point and waiting point if you are trying to get into it, especially if you're already in the OpenAI enterprise license space. You're definitely going to want to follow that news very heavily and also take a look at some of their new coding features that they've just released as recently as last week. You do definitely look at the market growth here on this slide as well, that this is not going anywhere. This is not just a bunch of startups that are looking to get acquired by an OpenAI, Microsoft, et cetera. These are definitely platforms that are both looking to gain investment, get different series funding, as well as grow on their own. And then one little note that the term vibe coding, which I wanted to call out here at the beginning, actually was coined early this year. So again, this is still new stuff that we're talking about by former OpenAI researcher Andreas Karpathy. So it's a relatively new term, and if you haven't heard about it, you're not alone. But is really something to have on your radar for, again, all of these types of customization pieces. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing. And I don't know if you guys had any thoughts so far on your favorite or least favorite apps in the vibe coding community. You know, Tam, if you want to start anything that really pops in your mind from looking at that different list, and if there's any that we're missing as well.
No, that pretty much covers all the popular ones. I'm currently using Lovable just because it's one of the first that I've picked up and utilized. And my advice is just if you find one that you like, honestly, they all do very, very similar things. Just go with it and learn it. And then once you hit some limitations, then perhaps that's when you look outside of and check out other tools. But between Lovable and Replit and Bolt, Replit I've heard is really great for those who want a little bit more control over the code. So if you're a little bit more technical, I feel like Replit is going to be the one that you want to go with. But you can also pair Lovable with a cursor. So Preston's going to show cursor a little bit later here, but um, that's also really good for code as well. So that's kind of been my experience with it, but I've been using Lovable. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Preston?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm boring. I use Lovable as well. So one I did want to mention that's not on there, and I think the reason why it's not right now is just because it's in beta or maybe even in alpha. But Zeit is one that I know other people are like paying attention to at least. And I think what I wanted to highlight is like the great thing about Lovable, in my opinion, is it has that Supabase integration. And some of these others may have, like all of these have the ability to be hooked up with things like Supabase or others. But the ease of using Lovable and then integrating Supabase is so great. I mean, you literally just like tell it, I want to integrate Supabase now, and it goes and creates everything for you in Supabase. And so like something that would normally take like hours is done in seconds. And I think that feature is one of the reasons why I've stuck around with Lovable, even when all these others have popped up. But yeah, like Tam said, I think if you do hit like limitations, or maybe you're on the free tier of Lovable and you don't want to pay for it, you could easily just like export that into your GitHub, which we probably will talk about shortly if you're not familiar, and then hook that up with Cursor and then pull it into Cursor so you can do edits from there. So it's pretty easy to go back and forth between the two, honestly. And I think each of us kind of actually do that for some of our projects.
Yeah, another the quick thing to touch on too is just the anticipating the longevity of the businesses that we're building on, these applications that we're building on. Like Lovable has a healthy annual ARR, right? Bolt has received funding recently, so they've got a lot of money to spend and to burn. But in this day and age, with all these AI tools popping up, it'll be important to take your bets on the tools that are going to exist 6 months down the road. So you don't
Yeah.
want to build your entire ecosystem or structure or application on something that might not exist in the next 6 months to a year. So I think with that in mind, Lovable and Bolt are some pretty good ones to consider starting out, and Cursor as well. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And I know we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the other reasons as we go along the road. So, Tam, did you want to start off with your demo of Lovable and how you've built a couple things on there, and we can kind of talk about like as we go through it the reasons for doing prototypes and mock-ups and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, happy to. Can you all see my screen?
Perfect. Yes. Hmm.
I'm just gonna turn on Do Not Disturb. So this is what the main page on Lovable looks like, and this nice little box, very similar to ChatGPT, where you can prompt it. This is where you would drop in your instructions, your system instructions of and details around the app that you want to build. So my process originally was, hey, let's just drop in a prompt that says, build me like an ROI calculator app. Very simple, very basic. But if you've ever messed around with ChatGPT, you'll learn very quickly that the more context that you provide the AI upfront, the better the outcome you're going to achieve from it. And there's no difference here when it comes to building with no code apps like this. And so my first step that I take now before I even go to this page is to talk to like a reasoning model, like a Gemini 2.5 Pro, to talk to, Claude 4 is really, really great now, and ask it to build me a product requirements document. I tell it what I want it to build me, and then it'll list all of the things out, user stories, the user interface, what it should look like, how the client should experience or how the customer should experience it. It'll even break it down by technical features as well. What does V1 absolutely need to include? Drop it in here, and it'll build you things like the ROI calculator. So I just this one for fun. Like quick PRD, dropped it into Lovable. It took about 5 minutes to spin up this entire thing. And so in the accounting world, oftentimes it's really hard to justify the value or the ROI that you're providing to your clients. It's hard for them to see how much value you're actually providing them. So sometimes, we see ROI calculators in spreadsheets or something like that, where we're using Lovable, you can create this beautiful interface. And honestly, I haven't spent too much time on the interface here, but you can kind of see how this works. This ROI calculator allows you to bring this up on the call with the client. If the founder themselves are doing their own bookkeeping or accounting, you can have them enter in information about the time that they're spending doing that, or if they've got an in-house bookkeeper that you're trying to potentially replace, right? Founder managed finance costs, how many hours are they spending on bookkeeping? How much do they value their time at? How much is it worth? Any money that they're spending on things like software costs or potential savings loss on like tax opportunities and things like that. Fill all that out. You enter in the information, your own fees, annual tax savings that you might be able to provide them, uh, potential error reduction value, efficiency improvements with all the tools that you use. And then you have this really nice dashboard at the end that you can share, 400% ROI, here's annual net benefit and things like that. Again, this took 5 minutes to build. One prompt, 5 minutes, spun this whole thing up. So that is one example.
That's cool. And I see the little edit with Lovable button at the bottom right. So at any point, you can go from an active prototype to going back and editing it with more prompts if you just wanted to say, hey, add in another tile here, or I would like one more input field there. And also it will automatically update the back end if you're using Supabase as well. Is that all part of your playing with it with a couple minutes?
Yeah, exactly. So if I head into the actual app itself, you can see on the left-hand side, this is where you prompt Lovable and ask it to do things. So here's that PRD, that product requirements document that I had mentioned before. It walks through the goals, the target audience, who are the primary users, scenario inputs, like what are we actually putting inside of this thing? How do the calculations work, et cetera, et cetera. And then it will build the ROI calculator. It tells you what it's going to incorporate into a V1, design elements, which you can change as well. So the coloring of everything. And then if it runs into errors, this is actually really helpful because if it runs into errors, you can just click a button and it'll diagnose and fix its own errors. And it's really nice. And then yes, you can prompt and say like, hey, I need to add certain fields in the back end. It'll connect to Supabase and create those databases so that you don't have to go in there yourself and write SQL code.
It's fantastic. And have you found that you've also had to go directly into Supabase to do anything in the back end, or has it all been functional from Lovable and from their user interface to be able to do everything?
That's a good question. So for the most part, you don't need to touch the back end. However, there are some cases where you may want a little bit more control or you want to build in what is called an edge function. If you want to build in automations on the back end. So an example is I built my website with Lovable just to see what was possible with it. And with that, I actually really enjoy Lovable for lead magnets. So I built a GPT prompt library on my website. What it allows people to do is they can come here, view prompts. They can one-click copy a prompt, paste it in their GPT. They can favorite things. And so there's some authentication involved in here. And this is, again, just a single prompt that we're telling Lovable, hey, I need you to set up a site that allows people to log in or remembers their email address. They can favorite things and come back to this in the future. In order to access this, they need to give me their email address, the full prompt library. And that email address is saved inside of a database within Supabase. Now, once you save the data there, it just kind of lives there in Supabase. If you want to do something with it, that's where you might want to go into the database and create an automation to move that email address to your newsletter platform, for example.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And is the PRD template in your perspective also part of your prompt library so that people, if they've never built their own PRD or even done that kind of like core level description of a minimal viable product, is that something that you would have, or was that something that you would try to encourage people to explore on their own so that they understand what the formatting is from their own perspective?
Yeah, I can definitely, if I don't have it in here already, I can definitely add that. Yeah. But I do
Cool.
encourage, I mean, just with AI in general, being curious, asking questions. It's going to be hard to find the right prompt for just any situation, but definitely I can provide an example. Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, this was super helpful, Tams. Thank you so much. And we're going to kick it over to Preston now, who's going to do a little bit of a showcase of Cursor, which again, as Tam mentioned, if you are hitting any errors or potentially hitting any roadblocks in Lovable, that might be the case where you take it over to Cursor to help elevate through some of those errors. And you guys, like, as Preston shared his screen, like, Tam, have you already had to do that in some cases, like with something like the ROI calculator, where you had to go into Cursor to help fix certain things, or has that not quite come up yet for you?
It's been a learning process, but pretty much any time where I'm not touching the backend or databases, Supabase, I'm using Cursor actually.
Mm.
Because you do have more control. You can call out certain, like tag certain parts of the code, especially as your site gets larger. It's
Mm.
helpful to be able to pinpoint like different resources, different code bases, and things like that. So it knows
Mm.
exactly what you're talking about, and that's one of the frustrating things, right, Sean? Because you've played around with Lovable a little bit as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you mentioned having to have patience when it comes to that stuff
Mm.
because sometimes it can take 5 to 10 prompts to move a button.
Right. And yeah, changing the look and the feel and everything, it can get frustrating. And this is obviously the benefit of a much more code-oriented platform like Cursor is you just know how to do it and you can change it to be exactly what it is. But for those of us who are not code-oriented, looking at what Preston's already pulled up can look daunting as well. And it's like, oh
Yeah.
man, I'm scared already. So, like Preston, talk us through like what's been your experience with Cursor and what's some of the best use cases you found.
Yeah. So real quick before I go into this, I want to say like you're saying, Sean, looking at this, if you don't know how to code, if you've never, read code or anything like that, I mean, it's going to be daunting. It's one of the reasons why I really like starting with Lovable because like in 5 minutes, like Tam was saying, you get a visual. But if you're working in Cursor and you start in Cursor, it's a little bit harder. I mean, you can still get visuals and stuff, but it's a little bit harder. You have to do some other stuff on top of it. It's not just going to sit within Cursor. So that's why I like starting out with Lovable, especially like I said earlier. I mean, I'm not someone who natively learned how to code on their in a class or anything like that. So yeah, so basically what we're looking at right now is Cursor. There's a couple of things that I wanted to highlight real quick. They actually just maybe like 4 or 5 days ago launched Cursor 1.0. And there's a few things to note in it. So before I note some of those, what you really like the very basic level Cursor is pretty much the same thing as Lovable, just in it's like more code friendly. So someone that does know how to write code and work in code, it's going to be very similar to something like VS Code, and it's maybe more for those types of people. But at the end of the day, you can still kind of do the same thing. So like you can see here on the right, I'll go into this in a second, but there's a window here where I can type in stuff like I would in Lovable or ChatGPT or whatever and tell it what to do, and it's going to go do it. So at a very basic level, it does similar stuff. What I want to highlight, if you're someone that's familiar with Cursor or interested in it, the Cursor 1.0 just launched the other day. It has a feature called BugBot, which is actually something that when you pull something down from GitHub, which can just house all of your code base. When you pull it down from GitHub, it'll automatically review it and detect any bugs, and you can actually just prompt Cursor to fix them immediately, which is pretty awesome. If like say for example, you started in Lovable and you pushed it to your GitHub, and then you pulled it into Cursor, it might detect some bugs that Lovable missed, or maybe you couldn't fix it in Lovable, and it automatically identifies that. So that's a cool feature that they have running now. There's also background agent, which we won't really touch on too much, probably outside the scope of this, but basically just think of it as AI that can run in the background. And then another feature that's really cool, if anyone is familiar with MCP, they have a one-click MCP installation now. So if you go to docs.cursor.com/tools, there's actually some pre-built tools in there. So like if I go here into my settings real fast, you can see there's an MCP section. So like just earlier, I connected Notion's MCP, and it's literally just, you go to that website, you click a button, and then it just puts it in here. So if anyone has messed around with MCP before, you know that it's a little bit more technical than typically like a one-click install. So that's a very cool new feature of 1.0.
And just real quick on MCP for the audience, that stands for Model Context Protocol or Modal Context Protocol. It's basically in the last quarter, it's the new way of adding interoperability to all kinds of tools, not just AI, but automation, data platforms, etc. And it has an overlay of security. So MCP is a critical part of making this type of customization work in the future. And that is a real big feature. So I think everybody who's watching this get into MCP because it is new, but it is very, very important to both personal and business productivity on customization of applications.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I completely glossed over that, but yeah, you're right. And like if what Sean said doesn't immediately make sense, like just look at this. There's I think like 11 functions here that you can use Notion for. So if I just went to my prompt here and I said create a new page called whatever in Notion, it would just go do that for me. And there's a lot of other cool stuff that you can build on top of that, but that's kind of just the idea behind an MCP server. So yeah, like Sean was saying, that's important to know. Very cool new feature that Cursor added recently. So I guess as far as demos go, it's not going to be as exciting. We're probably outside the scope of like looking at something, but what I wanted to show here is before this, I actually did something similar to TAM, but on not a full PRD. But basically, I went through ChatGPT and I was like, hey, give me a prompt to create an application using Cursor that can ingest a PDF tax return from the prior year and then immediately give an answer of like 3 to 5 things that are, it's like a quick analysis of the return and then a couple of things that could be improved. So maybe like, better deductions next year or something like that. And then the user would click a button and then they would get like an instant quote from, whatever accounting firm. So again, don't make fun of my example. We're not going to like look at it live, but I sent in a prompt that was like 2 paragraphs and it built this entire code base here. So like, I mean, a lot of this is just going to be nothing to people, but all of this is something that you would have had to do on your own writing code until things like Cursor and Lovable. So it built this by itself. I did this less than an hour ago, so I honestly haven't even looked at it that much, but just know like it built out this entire code base with like 2 paragraphs. And then if I were to say like, I need to change something, like Tam was saying, you can actually reference different sections of the code, or you could just completely start in the middle of nowhere. And most of the time Cursor will be able to figure out what you're trying to do. So I could say something like, change the main brand color to baby blue. And hopefully this won't give me any errors, but I just want to show like a quick example. It's going to start looking through stuff and it's going to hopefully start making some changes to the actual code. And then usually what happens after that is it'll either tell you like, hey, I made these updates, or it'll say, approve these updates. So yeah, it's asking me, do I want to use this hex code? So I could just say yes. And now it should hopefully go in and just update my code base. So while it's doing that, I mean, this is a this is a very basic example, but all of these things you would normally have to go in and like change this code or find it and change it, and that's somewhat difficult, especially for someone who's not super technical. But I did this in 30 seconds. So again, not the greatest demo of all time because we can't really see it. We'd have to do a few things at the end of this to go see that. But that's why I think, having Cursor and Lovable kind of working in connection is cool, because one of the features of Cursor, if I go here, I don't have this hooked up to my GitHub, but if I did, I could commit this, technically all of these changes, and it would push it to my GitHub. And then if Lovable is also synced up with my GitHub, it's automatically going to update my app in Lovable, and I can just view it from there. Gotcha. There are a few other ways to view things as well, but at least for me, especially if you're starting in Lovable, that's kind of the easiest way to do it.
And is that the best way to do the interface that you found is through GitHub as kind of the sync interface, and then go back? So even if you're using, Windsurf, Lovable, Claude, etc., always sync it through GitHub across all the different platforms that are being used for different reasons.
Yeah, I think that's probably best practice. GitHub is great because it can link up with all of those things. So it's easy to it's basically like, just think of it as like the house for all of your code, like whether it's for one project or 50 projects. GitHub's great because it's in the cloud and you can easily connect all these different tools to it. So like I was saying, and like you were saying, I mean, you can just go back and forth between them. So I think that's best practice. But I'm sure there are plenty of other people that do things slightly different.
And from a data backup perspective, are you backing up your GitHub to like a OneDrive, Box, Google Drive type of thing as well? Or how are you making sure that you're having versions just in case of things are changing?
Yeah, so that's a good idea. I typically have it like saved on my computer as well. But yeah, I think I mean I'm not building like 50 different apps, so that makes sense for me. But like that's a good strategy. The other thing is like version from like a version control standpoint, Cursor, especially when you're like syncing it up with GitHub, does a great job of doing that for you. So I guess one other best practice, like if you're actually going to use Cursor, anytime you make an update, like what I just did here, I should really just commit that and push it to my GitHub. And just, I would tag it with saying like, hey, I changed the main brand color to baby blue. And usually when you're working in something like Cursor or any, Windsurf or any other similar tool, that's kind of best practice just so you can see all of the different versions and easily, like, let's say it messed up my entire application when I tried to do this. I could see, oh, okay, here was the version that messed it up. Let me just restore back to the previous version. And you can actually, like, if you're syncing it between Lovable and Cursor, you can actually restore from the previous version in either. Like I could do it here in Cursor, I could do it in Lovable. I just have to make sure that after I do that, I sync it back to my GitHub. So yeah, again, kind of GitHub is kind of like the main home base for all of my code. And then I just make sure all of the versions get pushed to that.
That's fantastic. And that's also for everybody. We're going to do a couple more LinkedIn lives and live streams around this topic. And so we're planning to do a little bit of a deeper dive into how this interface works and being able to have a little bit more of a description around the security, the compliance, and the best practices and the upcoming sessions as well. And we do have a question that just popped up. Maybe both of you can look at it. Will GitHub continue to be a good midterm solution for these kind of efforts? I think, yeah, I would say yes. What do you guys think, Preston, Tam, if GitHub is still kind of the best possible thing, unless there's something else that's popping for you guys right now?
Yeah, I mean, GitHub. I think it's GitHub.
I mean, as a non-coder, I think developer might have a different standpoint, but GitHub
Yeah.
has been around for years, and it's great, especially maybe not. It's important to have that for version control as an individual builder, but especially as you scale and you bring in other team members, you want to have that visibility, that audit trail, so that everyone is aligned on what is happening. So yeah,
That's
Yeah,
GitHub
great.
for sure.
that's a great point. Yeah, GitHub can, it can version control, like she said, but also, yeah, you can add team members. And the other thing I was going to say on that subject, the Lovable 2.0 update, I think you can actually have multiple team members editing the same thing in your Lovable projects now. So that's kind of a cool feature as well.
And again, that's a positive, but it can also be a negative because of that version control issue that a lot of people
Yeah.
worry about. So yeah, it's going to be a good thing. So yeah, I think we're right up into the top of the hour. So really appreciate everybody who dipped in or out or watches us on the recording. Just a little tease that we are going to dig deeper into this into a future session. So be on the watch for that. Also, we're going to get more into some deeper pain point discussions and use cases. In particular, one of the main reasons why this stuff is so important for small, medium-sized firms is that as we just saw too in Cursor, there's a lot of connectivity and interoperability restrictions that we have, especially in the legal and the accounting space, where their APIs just don't quite foot the bill. This is a way to build middleware to do the things that you want to do. And we're going to talk more about that in the future. So please definitely give us a like, subscribe to all of our socials. This will help support more of this type of discussion, and let us know, give us feedbacks, give us questions for the next one as well. We'd love to engage with all of you. Any final thoughts, Tam?
No, I thought that was hopefully this was helpful for anyone who was watching as an introduction to vibe coding. But yeah, I'm excited to get more into depth with over the next few sessions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Preston, any final thoughts?
I mean, my final thought is it's fun to play with, so go play with it.
Exactly. It's like one of the easiest things that you can do. And as both Preston and Tam showcased, minutes can get you effectively into it. As long as you have an idea, you can actually start representing it. And that's what I've been doing a lot, mostly with Lovable, but also just with any of these AI tools. You know you can get the immediate gratification just when we want to help you do it in the most efficient and proper way. So with that, I think we'll close off. We appreciate all of you joined today. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.